Hi there, welcome to this walkthrough of the Burgmüller Opus 100 Études. I'm Graham Fitch. I am the author of practicingthepiano.com, the piano blog, and also the co-founder of the online academy, which aims to be the ultimate resource for pianists and piano teachers. Now, I'm going to be looking, as I said, at the Burgmüller Opus 100. There are 25 pieces, little studies in there. And I'm going to be looking at my comments as they come through. John, welcome. Maria, welcome. Please do click those heart buttons, those wow faces, those, things that you can do on Facebook to let me know where you are. Frankie, nice to see you. What I'm going to do to start with is just to show you the kind of study that we may have been brought up on if we've come from the, some of us have come from the old school, this sort of thing, but by Czerny. Now the problem with that, I think there are two problems. The first thing I would like to say is if that is done well, that study can absolutely be useful in the hands of a good teacher. That can absolutely be useful. So I'm not dismissing it or decrying it. What I am saying is if you don't know what you're doing with that study, you can cause all sorts of problems for yourself. Hi Diana, nice to see you. What sort of problems am I thinking about? Well, if you look at the hand is very apt to get frozen in this C major position. And what I'm also apt to do is to lift my fingers in this kind of piston style way, which was very much a hallmark of the old school, the old traditions in piano teaching. Lift the fingers, strengthen those fingers, which we're not really doing nowadays. When we talk about five fingers, we're introducing mobility. Now, if we play that Czerny with mobility, and I don't know if you can see clearly my fingers, hopefully you'll be able to see, instead of having a thumb alignment like this, which makes my third, fourth and fifth feel really weak, I'm going to be just simply moving across so that I've got a third finger 3, 4, 5 alignment. And if you want to discover that, just land on 3, 4, 5. So move. Do you see the mobility there? Can you see how I'm moving? Now, let me move straight across to the Burgmüller number 1, also in C major. Oh, by the way, I meant to say, the other thing that I find really problematic about some of those Czerny jobs is they're really boring. They have no musical interest. They're not really going to capture the imagination. All we heard in that 5-1, 5-1, 5-1, 5-1, chord 5, chord 1. Well, okay, who's going to want to sit there and engage with that for too long? Can't think of too many. Burgmüller, on the other hand, sorry, I put in an extra chord there. See, for me that's really beautiful. The melody, hi Sheila, Rehab, hi. The melody is really lovely and singable, and it encourages mobility. If you look at my hand here, Lynn, hello from North Wales. Janet from Norfolk. Do you see how I can use my wrist circles to mobilize? There we've got a melodic interval of the octave, which takes a little longer to express. So it's not a mechanical thing. From the very first etude, from the very first bar, we have something that's expressing music. Here, the design changes. Now, if you look at this next phrase, we have a modulation into the key of G major, the dominant key. Hello, Catherine and Beverly. From New Zealand. Wow, wonderful place. I've been there twice, loved it both times. The thing with this, the modulation to the dominant key is what real music does. So the ear is hearing music at the same time as the fingers are being given tasks to do. So let's look at the choreography just a little bit more. I discover here wrist circles work very nicely. Those are very small movements, if you can see better here. Very small movements where I mobilize my arm, mobilize my wrist, and my fingers go along with that. So it's a joint operation between my fingers and my arm. Now the second half begins, and that's an excellent thing because the hand's going in contrary motion. If your dominant hand is your right hand, then the right hand can teach the left hand. Hi Kay from Alton. The left hand can teach the right hand, or the other way around actually. Do you see how that works? So that's incredibly useful. But if you look at the patterns in the melodic line well, let me go from the beginning of the phrase. We've got a sequence here. Now look, the design changes. I've got a series of hooks there, ta-ya, ta-ya, and then a falling. So there's energy in them thou lines. The other thing that's really useful in this particular study is let me just see, Anderson from Nigeria. Wow, how nice to meet you. The chords in the left hand, we've got the primary triads in the left hand. We've got chord number 1, we've got chord 4, back to chord 1, Adrian from Ireland, hello, chord 5, 7, and here we get a secondary dominant that takes us into, that's D7, that takes us into G. Now, we can use this, if we're teachers, we can use this to teach chord legato. Now this is an important skill we pianists need to develop. Instead of lifting my whole hand up, I see a like button there. There are some people who don't agree with this, and which is the wonderful thing about piano teaching and life in general. I watch the politics sometimes on the television, and you're never going to get the two agreeing, are you? Let's hope we don't have fights over this though. So rather than just lift the whole hand up and dumping it down into that position and then back again and then back again, I find I can leave down my third finger and connect, and then my second finger, and there's a point of connection there. So when I lift up these two fingers, my third finger is there to join. Now I'm not talking about this, don't panic, I'm just talking about releasing and replaying and then back again. There's no tension in my hand whatsoever as a result of doing that, and I get beautiful connections and beautiful control in my left hand. Now I wanted to introduce you to the edition that I have made, the study edition that I have made, and this is it on my iPad. Let me see if I can do this without dropping it. What we've got here, what we've done here is a rich multimedia. That's about me, I'll pass over that. There's the introduction to each of the studies, so you'll see there introduction to Burgmüller, and then a teaching note about the study and its value. Oh, I see a wow face there, that's nice. Then we've got a scan. You simply scan that, or if you're on a computer, just click on it and it'll bring up a video walkthrough of me spending a fair amount of time going through each of the studies in turn. Now the score, what we've done here, if you can see this, there's the score there, urtext, in other words, it's not tampered with, it's based on the original author's manuscript. And then we've got footnotes. I don't know if you can see the little numbers on the top referring down to footnotes down in the captions below that give you information about not only the technical issues that come up here and how to solve them and how to practice them, but also, I think this is really important about these pieces, these little studies, are music, about the structure, about how the composer has organized the material. That means formal, in other words, the form, the structure, harmonic, and I think this is really important that we understand harmony, because harmony is something, all tonal music is based on harmony, and why save that for when they get on a little bit later? I mean, I've heard this teachers say, oh, well, they won't understand dominant sevenths at this stage. Well, I'm thinking, they might not understand all there is to know about a dominant seventh, but they can certainly understand the sound and the feeling of a dominant seventh and how it has to return home, how it wants to return home. So you'll find in the footnotes some, I hope, hopefully interesting observations about harmony, structure. There's also, and I'm going to just show you this now in the first study, there's a little QR code here, which if you scan it or click on it if you're on a computer, it will bring up a demonstration of me with this exercise that I have here. So not only is there an exercise that I printed up, but I've also got a QR code so you can see me do it. And I'm looking, for those of you with the score, at bar 13, where Burgmüller suddenly decides to, just at the climax of the piece, he decides to divide the right hand up into two voices. It's been in one voice. And then here. Now that could get you twisted and tight. Hello, Bob. But if we know how to move, do you see what's happening in my hand here? As I play my minim G, that's a half note G, I make a movement upwards. In other words, I don't go down into my key, I come up from my key, and that mobilizes my arm. Up, up. So what I have got here in the edition, let me just go through the exercises. This is exercise number 1. I've assigned 2 dynamic levels. So the top one is going to be mezzo forte, and then, see, I've mobilized that. And I love the feeling of freedom here. And you see, as I play my 3-2-1 fingers, I'm moving, I'm mobile. And then there's another one here. Veronique, hello from Switzerland. Most wonderful place. I'm doing a course in Blonay in Switzerland in October. Have a look on my website, you'll see if there are any places left. I think we're getting fast filled up. Blonay, Switzerland, the most fabulous place to be. So did you see what the second exercise was? I'm just tapping underneath the quavers, the 8th notes. And so that's an exercise that you can see in print, and you can also see me demonstrate. It's a very short video clip. There's no talking involved in that particular video clip. But it just means that if you're practicing and you're reading that exercise, you're thinking, I'm not really sure what he means there. Mobilize the hand to avoid tension. A wrist circle is one way of doing this. Well, what does that mean? Well, just simply click on the video. It lasts, I think, 10-15 seconds, and you can see me do it. In the next footnote, I describe the harmonic structure here, which is chord 1 in its second inversion, 1C as we say in the UK, or 164, which I actually prefer, going to chord 5-7 to chord 1. And that comes up so many times, not only in this set of pieces, but in music in general. It's what tonal music is based on, this idea of the tonic key being home, and when you have it in its second inversion, you're not quite home yet. You know you're going to have to go home. As soon as you play the dominant 7th, you're committed to going home. That's like putting the key in the door. You put the key in the door. When you play the tonic chord in its root position, you are in your house, you're back home. So what composers often do is they have a kind of celebration on the 1-6-4 chord. It's a little bit like delaying the return home. So you know you're going to go home, you know, maybe you're on curfew, you've got to be in by 8 o'clock. So rather than go in, you say, I'm going to have a little street party before I go in. And at that moment, what Burgmüller does is he introduces lovely things, gorgeous things in the right hand. That appoggiatura, it's so joyous, isn't it, when he goes to the A, the note above the G that he should be on. And then another appoggiatura here, expressive. There's chord 5-7. And if you think about what composers do when they get to that chord, oftentimes you'll find a cadenza. In a concerto, the orchestra lands on chord 1-6-4 or 1C. And the soloist then plays music that sounds improvised for however long, and then the orchestra then they do the trill, you know, the cadential trill, which would be, and then the orchestra comes back, and there's a little bit of music there just to round things off. Well, this exists in this music as well, the idea of that. So why not point that out to people who are learning this piece? I think it's a very beautiful piece. It's got in the coda, and again, you know, it's a real piece of music. It's got a coda And look what Burgmüller does in the coda. He doesn't just do a perfunctory, oh, let's wrap this thing up. He introduces some chromaticism. He already had introduced here bar 13 as a kind of tease for what we're going to come up to here. Chord 4, but with flat 4. And I don't know what that makes you feel. Chord 4 is already a relaxing element toward the end of a piece of music. Chord 4, the Amen, the plagal. But when you flatten it, it adds a note of, I don't know whether you could call it sadness, but certainly colour, chromatic colour. It encourages us to be musically expressive. And again, voicing the third degree of the chord on the top, and then the root on the top. Hello, Kate. I love my, oh, Frankie likes my batik. Oh, thank you. Right. We're looking now at the arabesque, the second one. Now, this is fabulous, this piece. It's really so interesting. If you look at what the left hand's doing. And then the roles get reversed. Changes here. See, I love that touch. The first time he'd got there, it was in the major, C major. That's kind of open colour. The second time, A minor, the home key. It expresses something that's musical, which gives it huge value, of course. And if we look at what the technical considerations of this piece are, and I call it a piece, it's supposed to be a study, but it's so much more interesting than the run-of-the-mill studies that we find. So we've got chords, how to control chords, staccato in the left hand. All notes have got to sound together. Now we cannot have a floppy wrist when we're doing that. If I flop my wrist there, I've got no control over my sound. I want sharp releases. I want sharp attacks and sharp releases. Can you hear how quick my releases are? Yes, Catherine says, I have some current grade 2 students who love to play this ABRSM syllabus at the moment. Yeah, absolutely. Who would not like to play that? I enjoy playing it too. So, you know, some teaching ideas for this. If your student is struggling with the hand shapes here, you could be creative and assign them all sorts of different formulae for practicing. How about an pa? Or just this. Bottom note, then the top 2. How about doing that from the top? I'm not doing quite enough. I'm saving a bit of time here. And the fun one would be starting with the middle note. Second finger, third finger. How about making an Alberti bass? Sorts of ways that you can, as a teacher, inspire your student to come up with different ways of playing that left hand. And how about improvising their own melody on the top? Now, Burgmüller's written not so much a melody, but a leggero group, a group of notes, which require a down-up, drop-roll, slur. Joel, hello, I'm sorry if you've already mentioned, but what level are these etudes aimed at? Yes, very, very good question. Well, they're starting off at around grade 2 ABRSM and going toward grade 5 by the time you get to the last one, approximately. Yeah, so they're fantastic for the elementary student, elementary and you know, lower intermediate, if you will. I don't think I'm going to need that now. Let me have a little look and just show you. I was going to show you what the arabesque, how to manage these drop rolls. So down, up. If you think about the drop roll that we teach to beginners, down and then coming up through the wrist, through a flexible wrist, we're going to do the same thing here. You're welcome, Joel. So down, we could teach it this way, or we could practice it this way, down, up. And then I add one more note, down, up, then one more, down, up. Do you see how I'm doing this? So instead of making 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 finger movements, excuse me, I'm making one movement, down, up, in my arm. It's generated from the arm, not from the fingers. Then here, do you see how I'm moving across? Beverly says, I never get tired of this piece. All students seem to love it. Yes, including adult beginners. Yes, they're not at all childish. They're appropriate for anybody. Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, did you notice what I did then? I didn't do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 piston fingers. You see, when I do that, what happens is this finger starts to creep up because it's unaligned or misaligned. But if I move as I play, you see what I'm doing there? So down, up. And remember, in classical period and even after, the tendency is for the first note of a slur, there's a slur that goes over those 3 notes. The first note of the slur should be stressed and the last note unstressed, not accents. So we don't want that, but we want down, up. Janet says, on my copy, it seems I learnt this piece in May 1957. Still enjoy playing it. I wasn't quite around in 1957, so I can't identify with that. Anyway, no, absolutely, who would not enjoy it? So do you see what's involved in that? And then, as I say, the harmony in the chords in the left hand. When the hands reverse in bar, what is this, bar 11, the right hand now has a melody. Get your students to sing the melodies. There's again a stretch of an octave. Is that right? No. It's not all about that. The left hand actually there is accompanimental. Then back to that. So a very interesting character piece and an extremely useful study. Frankie says, I used Bayer 1 year and then Duvernay, and Burgmüller is this correct path. I don't think there is a correct path as such. I'm not a great believer in huge numbers of these studies. I'll tell you why. I think when we start separating the study of technique from the study of music, we're already into a slightly problematic area, because we can develop ourselves technically using anything. And why not use real music to develop technical skills? I did a presentation the other day where I talked about inventing exercises from pieces. In other words, coming up with our own technical exercises from within the piece. And I'm going to show you that actually in number 4. Why don't I hop over to number 4 now? This is because I'm not going to have time to get through all of these, I can see. Number 4 is La Petite Réunion, the small gathering. But just to finish, with Frankie's question, I don't think it's a necessarily bad thing to have a certain amount of studies and exercises that we use. It's a very good thing. I would just avoid going crazy sitting there practicing hours a day, technical studies that have very little musical value, and that you might even be doing incorrectly. See, it doesn't matter the amount of time you're spending doing them. You might, let's say you do a whole bunch of Czerny one day and your halo feels very polished. Yeah, I've done a whole bunch of Czerny. I must have improved technically. My technique must be getting better. Well, your technique will be getting better if you're doing them correctly, with good use of the body and good attention to sound. But if you're not, then you've wasted time, and not only that, you might be building in habits that are detrimental to technique, to fluid technique. I've seen it all the time. I've seen it with people who bring lots of Hannen, or who want to play lots of Hannen. They say, I've got really weak fingers, I need to really strengthen my fingers with Hannen. And I first of all I think, Hannen is not going to strengthen fingers, and you don't need to strengthen. Well, Hannen can help if you're using it well, and I don't want to get into that subject now. But if you're using it as it says on the tin, you know, lifting these fingers like this, it can be a colossal waste of time. And I've seen the results of it. People who lift their fingers in isolation from the other fingers. Yes, Chia says, perfect practice makes perfect. Yes, absolutely. And practice makes permanent. So if we're practicing in an uncoordinated way and we're building tension into our bodies, and bad sounds into our ears, then we're going to replicate that down the road when we come to our pieces. So just be mindful about what the studies designed to achieve, and how much time do you need to spend on them, and what are they actually helping you to do. But going on to number 4, the little party or the little gathering, there's an introduction. Maybe somebody's calling, hey, do you want to go to a party? See, I love the way that Burgmüller, the second time the statement comes out, it's different. He doesn't just repeat. And can you hear the excited laughter in the wow, party? It's that kind of energy that we get in the beginning. Now, the technical issues that come up here in this particular etude, absolutely wonderful. It's pure gold to assign this to somebody of this sort of elementary level. This would be one of the harder ones. Double notes. Double notes are invaluable when it comes to technical development on the piano, because what we need to do is we need to make the outer fingers, the supposed weak fingers, as strong, as agile, as fast as the supposed strong inner fingers. Well, they are stronger, let's face it, and you can't go against nature. You can assist nature by aligning behind the weak fingers, and this is what I'm talking about all the time in my teaching. I'm showing people how to align behind the weak finger and how to use the arm to assist the weak fingers so that they don't feel weak. This is the trick. Now, what I would do here, we need to generate that touch from the forearm. Do you see there's a bounce going on here? So we simply practice each one twice. And as I do that, I'm trying to conjure up associations of pleasurable jumping. I'm a bit old to get on trampolines, but I do remember the joy that I felt as a child bouncing up and down on a trampoline. My body was completely free and loose, and I was enjoying every minute of it. Well, if you bring that association to these sensations, that's an excellent way to practice the double notes here. Before then we would just bounce on each one once. Now when the music itself starts, the study itself, I can't help but call these pieces music, because they are so much music. Burgmüller does there, he gives us a melodic line, but in double thirds. The pinky plays the top line. Let me play the pinky by itself. Well, it's not actually pinky, but the upper fingers. 5, 4, 3, 5, 4, 3. Now, do you see what I've done there? I've extracted the top line, the upper part of the double thirds, because I'm thinking in terms of soprano and alto, or flute 1, flute 2, or violin 1, violin 2. And I would first practice just that top line by itself with the fingering that I'm eventually going to use when I play both parts. And you see how when I land here, flexible, the wrist is free, springy. Not floppy, I don't mean floppy, springy. So then I would next, why don't I do that against my bass? And if you're a piano teacher teaching this piece, I would highly recommend that you witness that in the lesson. So if you've told your student to practice like that, there's very little incentive for them to do it unless you witness it in the lesson. So it might go something like this. The next week they come in for their lesson and you'd say, oh, I remember that we were looking at this first flute and then the second flute. Did you enjoy practicing by themselves? Let me hear how the first flute sounds against the left hand. and you have a kind of attitude of excitement. Oh, I'd love to hear what that sounds like, you know, show me. And then what does it feel like to play the second flute a bit softer by itself? And how would that sound against the bass? Now I've got all sorts of procedures in the study edition there for how to practice that. If I can show you a couple just quickly. Not the first thing, but one of the things I would do next would be double tapping the top finger. See what I'm doing there? Play twice, quite firmly, tenuto, and so on. See, I've got a heart button come up there. Somebody approves of that. There will be somebody who doesn't approve of that too, so that's fine. Let me look at the underneath voice. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to double tap the underneath note, but I'm going to do it staccato and leggero, really lightly. Double bounce. Yeah, somebody likes that as well. I can't see who it is that's liking it, but thank you for the like. And we can also practice breaking. How about I break the other way up? That's a little harder because I have to move my third finger from the top to the bottom there. I can also do some shadow practice. Hello Keith. Hello Ket. Shadow practice means that I touch, I play my top line while I'm touching underneath the lower line, but not allowing those notes to sound. This is hard. Now you'll only hear the top line and I don't think you can see too well what I'm doing, but my underneath fingers are touching, shadowing the notes that they would have to play, but I'm inhibiting the full descent of the key. And if I can do that skillfully, it means that I'm gaining tonal control, and this is what we're interested in. It's not just technical control. Can I play those two notes together? Tonal control. Can I create a beautiful line? I'm going for beauty of tone, I'm going for expressiveness, I'm going for musical meaning, because I'm encouraged to do that by the material. This is what I'm saying. Unlike other material which does not encourage this, Burgmüller's music always does. And I particularly like what he does at the end of bar 13, well, the end of that section, bars 13 and 14. We get there parallel 6 now, and we've had thirds. Now, in the edition that I'm using, the Urtext edition, there are no longer any slurs. Here we've got phrase marks, short slurs, instructing legato. Now, Burgmüller does not give those slurs in this. You will find it in some editions. Burgmüller himself did not put those in there, and I think they are a not very good idea to put slurs in there, because the young hand, the small hand, is going to struggle to play that legato. There's going to be all sorts of twisting going on there. We want to avoid the twisting. So I would just play separated, forte. And again, if you want to prepare your student for that, Serena, hello from Singapore, wonderful place. I had a great time there a few years back. You know, why not give them a scale? And again, you can get them to double bounce first, and then back down again. The double bounce is a very good thing to do because it actually makes it a whole lot easier. And then when they're ready to play the actual scale, get them to bounce on the spot for a few minutes. Well, not a few minutes, a few seconds. And then when they're ready, take that for a walk. So you're establishing there the sensation in the arm with something that's easy to do. And then you take that for a walk. And I'm balancing toward my top finger. My thumb is nice and light. There's lots more I could say about each of these pieces, but I think I should get a bit of a move on. Now, number 5, it's called Innocence. We're in the key of F major, a lovely serene key. And again, let's have a little look and see what this is about. let's unpack that a little bit. I seem to want to go to the left hand first, just to have a look at the progression of harmony here. Chord 2-7, chord 5-7, chord 1, if you're interested in that sort of thing. And some people are, especially the older, the adult beginner might very well be interested in the harmonic progression underneath. But I think if you look at the right hand again, you've got groups of notes in fours. Do you see how I'm curating those movements through my wrist? Down, up, 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 down, up, 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 down, up, up, up. Very small movements, rather than, you see, when I play that with one on a flat level, I'd be ignoring Burgmüller's slurs. He's given us 3 short slurs. And then we've got this lovely appoggiatura. Now, sometimes appoggiaturas are written out in notes like they are here. Sometimes they're written in full notes, grace notes, depending on the style. Okay, I hope we're still live. I noticed there was a disconnect there. There was my first class with Andras Schiff was getting me to release upwards, release the weight out of the keyboard onto the resolution, so that we release. Hi Prithvi, nice to see you. So what we do here is we curate. Again, I'm using that word curate. We actually have to instruct the hand. The same here. So that is a long slur. If you look at bar 3, that's a long slur. It goes all the way over. Now here, another appoggiatura. Now listen to this harmony. I sometimes use emojis with younger students. Emojis are really good. Yes, Marina says that my students love this F major study very much. Love. I love the word that we're getting, love. People really feel for these pieces. Have a look at this, what Burgmüller does there. He's taking us from an F major chord to a D minor chord, chord 2 in its first inversion, 2-6, or 2B if you're in the UK. So there's a chromatic alteration on the top, creating an augmented chord. So I'll often ask people to pick an emoji. There's a nice app you can get. I forgot what it's called. I think it's called Instant Emoji, something like that, where you can upload a score, and there's a whole library of different emojis, and then you can drag over the emoji to a particular spot on the score. So F major chord by itself would be a kind of chilled, not a great big smile, but a satisfied smile, And then what's this? This is the one where the mouth opens a little bit and the eyes open, because you've got this feeling of stretching. So, children like that idea of being able to find what the music expresses. It could be a single chord, or it could be the section. Now here again, if we look at the progression of chords, I talked about this earlier. We've got chord 1 in its second inversion, right? And then chord 5-7 and chord 1. We know we're coming home to, well, we're going actually to C major. We're modulating to the dominant key of C. And at that moment of 5-7, he gives us the flat 6. And now the fun starts. What he does is he keeps the left hand doing a kind of Alberti thing, and the right hand, no crescendo yet. Now you can. We're all the way out here. Now for little people, that poses a little bit of a challenge. If your body isn't so big, that's going to be a big stretch to make. But did you notice what I did when I played here? My torso starts to move over to the right. So this mobility that I've been talking about in the hand. Hello, Jenny. It's important that we feel that in our trunk as well, in our body as well. I was giving a Zoom lesson yesterday to somebody who was playing the Kapustin sonatina very well, except that she was terribly still in the body, and she wasn't moving at all, and there was no real kind of expression on the face. And I suggested that this very zingy rhythmical piece needs to have some life in the body. And I'm not talking about swooning and swaying, of course, we don't need any of that, but we need to feel the energy going through the body. So this is so playful. Now here's a potential technical problem with when we come down the scale of F major. If our elbow is too far in here, when I need my thumb, hello Victor from Mexico, I haven't been to Mexico, I'd like to, I've got a problem there and a problem there, so I need to make sure my elbow is high enough and far enough out. Hello Anne, lovely to see you. Now what I personally like to feel there, when I pivot over my thumb 3, I like to feel a rotation, and the same here, thumb 4. Do you see how my elbow stays stable when I do that? And that keeps my scale beautifully even, very free, and actually a joy to play. Don't forget that piano playing should feel lovely. It should feel yummy in the body. We never need to have any tension in our body when we play. If we've got tension in our mind, that's going to translate into tension in the body, because the mind and the body, you can't disconnect them. So, you know, that's very important, that we learn to enjoy the physical sensations associated with these pieces. Now let's go on. I think I can leave that one now. Oh, just the very last chord. Let's have a little look at this. We've got a forte chord there, a marked forte, and just an F major chord. Now, I can play that chord in one of several ways, but I like the feeling of coming up, propelling myself upwards. Rather than going down, I can go down if I want, but if I go down, I must make sure that my wrist stays springy. And I've got this analogy I use for the springy wrist, and it's to do with a stagecoach. If you think of a stagecoach of the sort that Her Majesty would glide down the Mall in, it would have presumably a big spring going underneath it from one axis to the next, so that you know, if there were a pothole in the street, heaven forbid that Her Majesty should sort of spring up and bump her crown into the ceiling there. So the idea of the spring is to absorb the shock. So you know, this springiness in the wrist, it's not a big move, certainly not that. It's just when we land here, can we be aware that the wrist is springy? So two ways of doing it. One, come down through the wrist. You notice the follow through there? I follow through that stroke like a tennis stroke. No tennis player ever did that. They follow through. So the racket goes through after the ball has been hit. Same here. And another way to do it is simply to come up. Thrust. And the thrust gives an edge to the sound. Cheer says, is it okay if I play with low wrists? I do not like low wrists. It's your body, you do what you want with it, but in terms of piano playing, you do not want a low wrist, because a low wrist pulls on the tendons here and creates tension. And playing like this is really not a good idea. You want to make sure your wrist is on the level with the forearm. This is, I think, virtually all modern schools of piano teaching, when we agree on certain things, and this is one of the things we agree on, that we don't want the wrist down like that. Now you can use movements of the wrist where the wrist can come up higher than that, if we're doing a drop roll slur, let's say. But when I do a drop roll slur, I don't want to drop down there. So that's a quick answer to that. Having a look at number 5, sorry, it's not number 5, it's number 6, called Progress. Now in the key of C major, we've got, again, a middle section in the minor key. Now, just let me show you. This expresses joy, I think. It's the idea of we've done 5. We've gone through the first 5. Oh, who says that? Janice, I have to play standing up. Oh, that's interesting. I do know that there's some teachers who do that standing up business. I've never done it myself. I must explore it. Not now, though. Isn't that joyous? chorus, and I promise you that feels really lovely in the body. Let's just have a little look at some of the things that we need to do here. There's a scale in tenths. Now, if you're struggling with that, you can always practice it going up and back. Do you notice I'm giving it shape? You can also do some chaining. What am I doing there? I'm playing the first group of notes, stopping on my second beat. Let me add now one more note to that chain. Now one more note still. And I notice, 2 third fingers. What would that feel if I did that up and then back down again? And then finally I get up to my high note, and look how he comes down. He kind of floats down. So up in a straight line and then floating down, and then he does the same thing again. Go for the design. Enjoy the designs in the music. All music has designs. And then laughter. See again there. Notice that I'm bouncing from my forearm. I'm not a great fan of wrist staccato myself. I find that a bit kind of wibbly wobbly, a bit floppy. Some people like wrist staccato, and you know what? I think there's room for everything in this world. There's no one right way to play the piano. Some people believe in doing it this way and teach that system, and it works fantastically for them and their students, and other people have a different system and it works fantastically for them and their students. So we avoid divisions here. We go with what our teachers say, and we respect people who have different opinions. We have to. So that feels really nice. And then at the end we've got a scale in contrary motion. Do you see how I release my arm at the top? So I've got the first part of a wrist circle. If I were to continue, if I were to come up and back, I would be very free doing that. See, what we want to avoid is this. Yes, as long as, Neil says, as long as there is no tension. Absolutely. Tension is the #1 enemy. How do you prefer of using pedal of all? Frankie says pedal in Burgmüller. You know what? That's actually a very interesting thing. I find myself using it for me, but it's very subtle. And there's some pieces that would absolutely need it, and we'll get onto them. Hopefully, I'll be able to get onto number 7 in a second. Yes, if I go on to number 7, there we do use pedal. But there's another one later, number 10. Where I use a little bit of a halo pedaling. This is number 10. I'm going out of sequence here. So if I take my foot off, my hands off, you'll notice that my pedal is down the merest fraction. And what I'm really doing is just enabling a little bit of resonance. It would be akin to taking a piano from a dry carpeted room and putting it in a building like a church or a cathedral. Don't know if you can hear. There's a microscopic amount of resonance that I like there. Compared to no pedal, nothing wrong with that. Now it all depends on the student or the player. If you've got a young child who would not perhaps be ready for the idea of fractional pedals, it's a bit of an advanced concept, then you wouldn't use it. If you've got an adult who is an intelligent adult who can engage with that, what's wrong with experimenting with that idea, in the lesson? Just try. I can remember the first time I was shown that type of pedaling. It completely changed my attitude to sound. The idea there is you put the foot on the pedal, and you might just want to put the pedal down a squillimeter here, maybe there, where you want a particular moment of resonance. and you wouldn't be able to write that in the score. So a lot of the pedaling that I find myself doing now is that sort of pedaling. It's touch pedaling. It's not mark it in and the pedal goes down there and pedal comes up here. Although we would have that for the next one. Let me just finish off what I was saying about the scale in bar 8. Now a lot of people would struggle with that. They'd say, oh, I've got weak 4th and 5th fingers. I know I need to go and do loads of studies to strengthen my 4th and 5th fingers. I'll just spend half an hour a day doing Hanon. Wrong. Well, it's the wrong diagnosis. You don't have weak 4th and 5th fingers if you align behind them. Do you see how I'm lining up there? So I could either do that by just moving laterally or making the lower half of an ellipse, releasing up here. No tension in that at all, and great strength when I come to my pinkies. Let me, since the subject of pedal has come up, and I've probably got a little bit of time to look at this next one, number 7. It's called the clear stream. Now the clear stream. Let me just play a little bit of it first. This I would venture to suggest needs the pedal. I guess you could do it without, but you'd be missing the resonance. If you look at what's going on there, very, very simple left hand, a drone really in the left hand. The left hand's just playing tonic dominant. And again, I'm very freely rotating between those two, pinky, thumb. I'm not using my fingers like this, but just rotating the arm. The forearm is doing the job there. Right, that feels lovely, and against that, melodic element. Whoops. And against that we've got broken chords. And then he unwinds down. See, there's a good example of how the wrist needs to be very free, and when I say a free wrist, I'm not talking about a wrist that droops and sags like a deflated balloon. It's not. All that really has to happen with the wrist is that we don't lock it up, and we don't. As soon as we've locked our wrist up, then we're forced to play from our fingers like that, and then that not only does that feel really not very good, it feels weak, it feels uncoordinated, and it doesn't sound good. Certainly does not feel good. So everything we do on the piano needs to feel good in order to sound good. Now I don't know if you can see what I'm doing there, but just very tiny, minuscule circles. I could also experience it with drops. So I could drop into the thumb. When I say drop into the thumb, my thumb is already on the key, and all I do, you see, thumb's on the key, I'm just dropping down here. So I drop down here, and I come up, down, up. You get the idea? So those are two different ways of choreographing. I might also feel a rotation. See, from the 5, 2, 1, I might explore that as a possible way of mapping this. If we look at the next part of this, from the second half of it, this is a very beautiful thing he did. Let me just play a little bit of it. What he's got there, then back. Daniel, hello. What he's got there is a shadow of the melodic line, well, it's actually counterpoint, really, broken. If I played that as blocks, I could also play it like this as blocks. very good ways of practicing. When I play, one other way of practicing, which I think is very helpful here, if you put the A, the thumb A in the right hand down, put the key down. I like the idea of putting it down silently, and then you can play. So I'm shaping the line. You see what I did there? And that will just anchor my thumb in the A where it belongs. And the A, of course, is really not important. It glues the texture together. And I've just discovered here a neat way of practicing that at the end of that study, well, at the end of the middle section, bar 16. See what I did there? This is playful practicing. What I did was I played the passage forwards in the way that Burgmüller wrote it, and now I'm playing it backwards, literally forwards and backwards, and I can make a loop out of that. And if I really want to have fun with it, I can change where I put the accents. Maybe I'll put accents every 6. See what I'm doing there? I could use rhythmical groupings if I wanted to. So I think because we're coming very close to the end, I was hoping to get through 12 of these etudes today. I haven't. I've got through 7, and I could have spent an hour on each one. What I'll do is I'll come back and do the next lot in another live Facebook Live. But just to remind you of my new study edition, the Online Academy, we've put out the first 5 of these etudes in the edition, where you will see a video walkthrough, a detailed video walkthrough with me, and then the edition itself has, well, it has a link to that video. We have the score based on an Urtext score with footnotes, and you can look at the individual footnotes that lead you to the bottom of the page, and you will find there detailed instructions on practice, how to practice with some, I'm quite proud of this, some little QR links that will open up in a video, and then you can see exactly how that looks. I don't do any talking on that one, it's just close up of the hand, right close up, and each video lasts just a few seconds, so you can watch it over and over and over until you get the sense of it. And then, as I say, there are footnotes that describe the compositional features, because I think if we're teaching these pieces or playing these pieces, it's an ideal opportunity to study musical form, musical structure, musical devices such as the appoggiatura, harmony, you know, how does harmony work? It's all very well to label something 2, 5, 1, it doesn't mean anything, it's just a bunch of numbers, but if you can hear how the harmonies function, how they work, what better age or stage to start that at than here? They're absolutely there on the page to be enjoyed, to be appreciated, to be understood. And I don't think it's something that we necessarily have to wait until later for. So I hope you've enjoyed that little walkthrough there. Any questions that I haven't addressed that have popped up in the course of this, I will get to, you know, over the weekend probably. So I will say goodbye now, and been good to be with you. Thank you so much for watching, and catch you at some point again.